Thank you so much. I can feel the air warming up just with the energy here. Thank you, Terry, for your encouragement, for your support, and for your leadership for what is right. Thank you, Matt McCoy, for understanding how local leadership gets the job done. And thanks to all of you for being here on this brisk evening that reminds us we're really getting into election season. I'm so honored that you've decided to take some time to come together and talk about where our country is headed. I have never been more convinced than I am now that our country is running out of time, but that it's not too late. That is what this campaign is about. And we're going to have to act fast in order to make sure that the future is better than the past. The core falsehood of the phrase, "Make America Great Again," is that there is no such thing as again in the real world. It falls to us to make sure that the future is better than the past, and I'm asking you to join me in making sure that we do that. But it starts with understanding why politics matters, why we get involved in the first place, what's at stake. And the way it looks on TV, you'd think it was just all about the ups and downs and the numbers and who got the best zinger off on the debate stage and who had the best lines on cable and in the committee room. You would almost forget that what matters in politics, the reason we care about elections, is that the big decisions they make in those big white buildings in Washington filter into our everyday lives. They are part of whether our lives go well or go poorly. They come into our homes, our paychecks, our marriages. I come to this as somebody from a town about, which way is east? About 6 hours that way up I-80. That lost thousands of jobs and thousands of people after the factories closed. So much that I didn't even know growing up that it was unusual to have empty factories and empty houses all around. I know what happens when decisions are made without caring about us in the middle of the country. And it's the story not just of my community, but of my life. People in my life have been saved by Obamacare. People in my life have been lost to the opioid crisis. I'm standing in front of you as somebody whose life was changed by the orders from an American president that sent me overseas to a war zone, and somebody whose marriage exists by the grace of a single vote on the United States Supreme Court. I know why politics matters. If we want to win, we have to make sure that we don't play the game that this president's created in Washington. We can't go on his show, this reality show, or game show, or horror show, or I could think of a couple other unrepeatable ways to characterize the show, but the point is, if you're on his show, even when you're winning, you're losing. Which is why we're not going to play his game. We're going to pick up the remote and we're going to change the channel to something better. That's the kind of candidate I'm going to be for you. That's the kind of Democratic nominee I am going to be for you if you select me as your nominee. But there's something else at stake. Something much bigger, which is what kind of president is America going to need after the Trump presidency comes to an end? Remember, one way or the other, the Trump presidency is going to come to an end. It's an encouraging thought. It's a relief. But I'm asking you to stop and really think what it's going to be like that first day when dawn comes to a country after Donald Trump has been president. Sure, it's a relief to think about the fact that this particular kind of chaos and corruption will come to an end, but then what? Our country will be even more torn apart by politics than we are right now, even more divided and doubtful and polarized. And all those big issues that helped get us here in the first place, they didn't take a break. They're going to still be waiting there. That means we're going to need a president to pick up the pieces, to turn the page and to lead America into a future where we deal with these big challenges in front of us and are unified. We're going to be so exhausted from fighting, and yet we can't give up. And we also can't turn on each other. Think about what that will require of the American president. I'll tell you what I believe it'll require. It's going to require a president who can unite us around the values that make America America. And these values don't belong to one political party. They are American values that all of us ought to be able to embrace. When I'm talking about love of country, I'm not talking about the nationalism that tells a bunch of people right here in America that they don't belong. I'm talking about the patriotism that looks at our flag and recognizes it as a symbol of American freedom, that looks at our flag and honors the fact that, for example, when a public servant blows the whistle on official misconduct, that is an act of loyalty to the republic for which it stands. I'm talking about a sense of love of country that remembers that our country's made of people. That you can't love your country and hate your fellow Americans. That protecting our country means protecting each other from all enemies, foreign and domestic. That if we're serious about keeping each other safe, that's going to take a lot more than just hugging the flag, sometimes literally. It's going to take, for example, seeing to it that the Second Amendment can never again be twisted into an excuse to do nothing at all to keep our schools and our shopping centers and our places of worship safe. And yes, it means recognizing that climate change is the global security threat of our time and leading the world in confronting it before it ruins our future and the future of another generation. That's national security too. That's what I mean when talking about honoring a value like security, and that's what you can expect from my president. See, you can expect a presidency that gets that there's more to freedom than just cutting regulations and taxes. That freedom doesn't just mean Amazon's freedom not to have to pay any federal income tax at all. I'm talking about the freedoms that decide whether our lives are going to go well or poorly. Not just freedom from, but freedom to live a life of your choosing. And yes, sometimes that means getting government out of the way. Like my presidency will get government out of the business of dictating to women what their reproductive health care choices ought to be. But sometimes it also means demanding that our government step up and solve a problem. Like health care, because you're not free if you don't have it. That's why I stand for Medicare for all who want it. The choice will be yours, but one way or the other, you're going to get health insurance when I am president. That's what it means to honor American freedom. These values that could knit back together the American people, but are right now being used to divide us. Values like faith. And another thing you can expect from me as a president who insists on representing people of any religion and of no religion equally, because that's one of the ideas that our country was built on. But also people guided by faith will look at our White House and not have to wonder whatever happened to that scripture that said, I was hungry and you fed me, I was a stranger and you welcomed me. These are the values that could bring us together. This is the kind of presidency America is going to need, and it's the kind of presidency I'm going to deliver. A few other things you can expect from me. You can expect that when you turn on the TV, this is another public health contribution I want to make, that when you turn on the TV and you see the White House, your blood pressure will go down a little bit instead of up through the roof. Wouldn't that be nice? You can expect a president who understands that we have to face the toughest issues that have been with us, not just in my lifetime, but for generations. It's why we need to match the scale and the ambition of the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe with a Douglas Plan to end systemic racism right here at home. It's why your president will personally lead the way in ending the silence and the stigma around mental health and addiction in this country. And you will get a president who understands that personnel is policy, that the appointments that are made have incredibly important implications. You deserve an attorney general who will be an attorney for the American people, not for the American president. You deserve a head of environmental protection who accepts climate science and actually cares about protecting the environment. And the teachers, parents, and students of this country deserve a Secretary of Education who actually believes in public education. It is time. That's the kind of president I'm going to be. And one more thing. When I'm president, the United States in the world will not just be one more country scrapping for advantage like all the others. We will restore U.S. leadership and credibility before it is too late. Because when I was abroad, the flag that was on my shoulder didn't just represent a country, it represented a country that kept its word. And our adversaries knew it, and our allies knew it, and that American credibility, just as sure as my body armor, kept me and the men and women I was deployed with safe. We dare not undermine that American credibility by betraying our allies, and when I am president, we won't. So I'm asking you to spread something that I know went out of style a little bit in American politics, and it's hope. Because running for office is an act of hope. Organizing for somebody running for office is an act of hope. Voting is an act of hope. Shivering on a clear evening when there's a perfectly good Notre Dame game going on to see somebody talk about the future of our country is an act of hope. So I know you've already got it in your bones, but I need you to spread it. Can I look to you to spread that sense of hope around your community and for everybody that you know? Well, that's what it's going to take to change the trajectory of this country. Now, our gatherings have grown less and less intimate as the campaign has grown, but I still think this ought to be a conversation, not just a monologue. So I'm going to ask you to welcome to the stage one of our fantastic team members, Michael Paulson, who's going to be your voice, reading questions that we've got from members of the audience and leading our conversation. Welcome, Michael.
All right, take it away. All right. All right, Pete, my mom has been living with dementia for 6 years. Do we have a good plan to help our aging population?
Thank you. Are you here? Thank you for coming. And thank you for sharing your story. Dementia is a cruel, cruel thing for everybody who has a loved one suffering from that. And one thing I know is that the United States has led the way in research and development and medicine that has defeated some of the cruelest diseases of prior generations. Why can't we do that for Alzheimer's and dementia as well? I believe we can, if we are willing to commit the resources and make the investments, and if we are willing to lead with science, which starts with believing in science and what it means for our ability to advance as a society. Now, you also mentioned that our population is aging, and that's only going to increase in our lifetime. It's why we need to make sure that we combat the social isolation of seniors that helps to decide whether seniors will age well and can even affect how many more years that a senior citizen can enjoy. It's why my national service plan includes an intergenerational core to engage young people to get involved not only in serving seniors but in learning from them and inviting them to contribute and help too. Because there's an untapped resource in America's seniors and people want to contribute all the way through their lives. So we're going to support that. We're going to support lifelong learning. We're going to support that kind of research. And I believe the first survivor of Alzheimer's is walking the earth today. We just don't know who they are. We've got an obligation to make sure that Alzheimer's and dementia get the kind of research that is going to be needed to end them once and for all.
All right. Ashley from Ankeny asks, are you an organ donor?
Oh, great question. I am. Where's Ashley? Hi, Ashley. How are you doing? Oh, okay. There we go. All right. Well, thank you to all of the organ donors in the audience tonight. And, yeah, I don't have like a whole thing to say about that. Just, I sure am, and thank you.
All right, Pete. The talk of eliminating the Electoral College seems short-sighted and fails to recognize the great compromise which our country was founded upon. Your opinion?
Ooh, all right. We're going to have to spar a little bit. Are you here? All right. How you doing? Good. So, look, call me simple-minded. I just think in a democracy, the best way to elect our leader is to count up all the votes and give it to the person who got the most. Now, I know there was the great compromise, but let's admit that that was a compromise with slavery. And to the extent that there is a defense of the Electoral College, it used to be that it helps small states, right? Only today it doesn't help small states. It just helps some states. Think about it. A small state like Rhode Island doesn't count because it's too liberal. A small state like Wyoming doesn't count because it's too conservative. A medium state like Indiana doesn't count because we're too conservative. And a big state like California doesn't count because it's too liberal. And here's the other thing. The other argument that I used to find convincing, to be honest, was that candidates wouldn't visit certain areas if it weren't for the Electoral College. Although, again, look at all the areas that are being cut out right now. But here's the other thing. When you're electing the governor of Iowa, right, you don't have counties vote. People vote. And then the person who gets the most votes gets to be the governor. And I'm pretty sure that anybody who's ever run for governor of Iowa has gone to the big cities and they've gone to the small towns. Because it's the right thing to do and it's how you reach people. So I believe that's, and after all, it's how we run every other election we do in this country. And the other thing I would mention is, if you really want to think about it, and this is what I'm getting at when I talk about how politics is personal, think about how your life is different because of the Electoral College. How your life personally changed because the Electoral College exists instead of a national popular vote. And there are two big ways that your life is different. Your life is different because we had President Bush instead of President Gore, which means, among other things, that if the Iraq War affected you in any way, then your life changed because of the Electoral College. And your life is different if you think that your life is different in any way because Donald Trump is President of the United States. Those are the biggest things that happened in your life because of the Electoral College. And I just think that overruling the American people isn't democratic. I think we can honor the concerns of people in rural areas and urban, big states and small, different kinds of counties and communities, but do it in a way where everybody's vote counts exactly the same. I just think that's the fairest way to run an election.